there's a lot of very creative people in here. We're going to have John Beasley start off with a number of things that he had, and then we'll follow up with Neil and Peter, have some things that they're going to talk about. John Solberg has got a few things to show us. Joel is going to show us some activities that he's been involved in. David's got a couple of them. John Lundgren, Bill George, Jim Sexton, Don Harding. So I really appreciate everybody that stepped up and brought forward their ideas. So we'll kind of keep it moving. As John's getting his ready to go, Neil, Peter, if you want to get your headphones ready for the next one so that we can just kind of rotate those very quickly. And we don't have very much idle time because we've got a lot to present.
Okay.
You know, we make a lot of tools, and it's kind of fun to make tools. Well, I decided I was going to try to make a skew chisel. And it turned out it wasn't hard to do. You can buy a high-speed steel bar, like at Inco or other places like that. So I bought a 1/4 by 3/4 by 6 inches. I should have done this before. I made a tool holder, and I think, John, you're going to talk about how to make these? Are you going to talk about how to make these? No? Okay, well, John's not going to talk about how to make these, but you can ask him how to make them if you don't know how. Anyway, so I just made a holder for it, and I had to cut here and here, which was not a big deal. I just cut using, what are they called? The angle grinder, basically. And it was a Harbor Freight thing for like $8 or something, so it was very easy to do. And it works great. I have a 1-inch skew that I sharpen the same way, and I really kind of prefer this one, the one that I made. A reason maybe to do this would be if you're thinking about trying a different grind on it, on your skew, instead of using your expensive skew and messing it up and then changing it and getting rid of a lot of the metal, buy a bar and just grind it however you want. The bar costs about $10, so the whole thing cost me less than 20. And it's a good tool. I use it a lot. So that's the first one. The second one was, you know, when we read AAW or we go to one of the symposiums, you see ideas that people have, like on the cover here, Clay Foster did this one. And you think, how did he come up with that design? Where did that come from? Well, I was at the used bookstore here in town last week, a weekend or so ago, and I happened to be looking at this book, and look at this. Now, Clay copied it, but he acknowledged that he copied this from Pueblo Indians and probably gave more information about it. But if you look at it, it's exactly the same design. That's where he got the idea of how to do this. So it's a good idea to look at, like this book, for example, is a book on symmetries of culture, and it's a lot of designs that have been used in a lot of different cultures. So if you can kind of look at how other people have done things, maybe in ceramics, maybe in fiber or something else, and apply that to wood, it's new then. It's something that's different, and it's an interesting design then. So anyway, this is one way to get ideas, is to find what other cultures have done and basically copy them and acknowledge it, of course. Okay, so you want to talk about the wood burners?
Okay, we're going to, I guess a few weeks ago, a number of us took a class from Graham Priddle, who's from New Zealand, on wood burning, and he makes those little boats. I think if you were here probably last month, you saw some. I'm in here the month before. I can't remember when we brought them in. And we took it down at Gene Colley's Canyon Studios down in Copper Canyon. And if you haven't ever been to a class there, I don't care what other class you go to in the United States, it's not as good as the one as his, because if you're with the same person somewhere else at Aramont, or doesn't matter where it is, compared to where Gene is, and if you have the same guy, there's only seven of you in the class. So it's just unbelievably hands-on. So if you haven't taken a class there, then if you're going to take one, that's the place to do it, because it's the best place. Okay, that was just me talking there. Okay, so these, as you see up here, are a number of them. And so this is what Graham Priddle uses instead of, if you have another wood burner at home that you've bought, or you've seen them for sure. So he took us down, we went down to Harbor Freight and bought these for $30. What was it, 30? I think $30. We took it apart, he cut out all the insides. so that I'm sure it's electrically sound. But he took it all out, and we just plugged all this stuff in the back. We put a little controller here, and that's really all that's on mine, and Gene's, or Neil's too. And then we have a little burner. These are the ones we got from him. So I'm not going to get into burners because John Solberg is going to talk about those. But we have a bunch of different tips, and you can make your own tips. And I'm not going to get, I'm going to just say a couple things about tips, but where's Joel? Joel's going to do tips at the end of this thing. So we all made a bunch of our own tips and stuff like that. But, so when you turn these little beauties on, yeah. It's a battery charger. It was. It does. Don't try to charge the battery anymore. But I mean, it really gets hot compared to the ones that you're talking about. Okay, so this has got you can't see it from there, but it's got a little design on the tip of that. So this is just one of the ones he uses, and this is just a rotary bit that he chops off and wraps this nichrome wire around. He does it with nails. I mean, there's nothing, I couldn't believe some of the stuff he used. I just wouldn't think it would get hot enough. But with this, it gets really hot. The problem is, you have to be real careful because if you use the nichrome wire, which we used a lot of them, we made a lot of tips. If you turn it up too hot,
we'll show you what happens.
we'll turn it up too hot. That's your cue. That's what happens. And it doesn't take much to make that happen. So you have to do it real gradually, okay? And I think John's got another plan here for that one. But anyway, there's a lot of the different tips that he uses. I'm just going to show you a couple things. And he makes them all himself. They're just little things like this. One of John Solberg's bowls over there is made with that. And this is the one, who knows who, senior moment, what's her name? Molly. Molly, so these are the ones she makes, and you see her design in many places. So, but you can make your own tips, and that's a lot cheaper than buying them. So when you do it, then as soon as you make one, start playing around and keep your board, and so you know what you've used and what it's going to look like. Where do you want it? Okay, so this is just playtime, but these are the tips, some of the tips I've made, and this is the little. One of the ones we use there. This is a little barbed wire one I made. But anyway, so just keep it so you know what it's going to do and practice before you put it on a bowl. It's always helpful. Okay, Neil, you got it. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, the way we did it was we got the battery charger at Harbor Freight. They're on sale now for $30, I think, or so. And if you find the coupon, you can get them for $30. Anyway, what you do is you open it up and you cut everything out. There's a transformer, that's all you use. So on the hot side, on the plug-in side, you put the light dimmer. Now, you don't use just any light dimmer switch. You want to get one that's, what's it called? Low voltage magnetic. Low voltage magnetic, that's what works best. And apparently at Lowe's they have them. Did you get yours at Amazon? Lowe's has them. I don't know that, well, they do have them both, I think at Lowe's and Home Depot, but you have to look, make sure you get the right ones. And then that's pretty much it. On the output, you just go directly to the pin. 500 watt. Yeah. What wattage do you need on the light dimmer? And 500 watt is what we're using, I guess.
You're going to put it together, hand out, email out.
Actually, you can find it on the web easier, probably. And plus, then I'm not liable. There's a YouTube video that shows how, and there's direction. I mean, if you just Google battery charger, burner, wood burner, or something like that, you'll get all kinds of stuff that'll tell you how to do it.
I wanted to talk about making tips. One of the advantages of the Burn Master is that it has replaceable tips. And also with this particular design that Graham Priddle has, you can make your own replaceable tips. And the reason why he does this particular machine instead of the Burn Master is he likes to burn faster and hotter. And he finds that the Burn Master won't tolerate that much heat. It will shut itself off, and you have to wait for it to cool down so you can reset the circuit breaker, and also the handle gets very hot. With his design, it stays much cooler. The handle stays much cooler, and you can burn at a hotter temperature, and you can make various brands. And see, I'll put them here on the camera so you can see them. Down here, this is just a cutting brand, and I will make one of those in a second. This is the commercial variety at low heat, just in a Burn Master, and at a higher heat. So you see there's not a whole lot of actual difference in quality. This is just a circular brand, and when you run them together, you get this pattern. This is just a nail, and I wrapped a wire around it and heated it up, and that's just the head of the nail pressed into the wood. This is another design with a star. And let's see, are we seeing that? That's a nail head, and I drew a star pattern on the end of a nail, and then used a little disc wheel and a Dremel tool and cut out to make this star on the nail. Then wrap a wire around it, and it will glow and get very hot, and then you can use that as this brand. I'll show that to you in just a second. It's okay. And now several other brands. This one I made in a double circle, and it made this design. This is an S shape over here, and several other curlicues, and this is the classical Molly Witten barrel shape. Looks like it's, there we go, barrel-shaped brand. So I just want to demonstrate a few of these things for you. I'm going to show you how to make a knife brand. Trying to brand my ear. There we go. That was rather clever. I don't know if I can do that again. I don't know if I want to. Yeah, this loop is not fitting on my belt is the problem. Okay. I'll put this back on. There we go. Don't know if I have quite enough room. Do we have a plug that's closer? I did at one point, yes. All right. Okay, there we go. Okay. And we'll put this over here. Okay. So I've got just a loop of wire, and twist it so that one is on top of the other, and squeeze the ends together. Just like that. Turn up the heat a little bit so that the wire is nice and hot. And then pound this. Can we see that? Let me move it over here a little bit. So doing a little blacksmithing. And now, if you can see that, it is getting much thinner. Keep on pounding it. I won't do it all the way till it's a knife-like edge, and then take a little piece of sandpaper and sharpen it, and you now have a cutting or writing implement that can make nice, thin cuts and doing outlining on it. Okay. Make it just a little bit thinner. Then you just take this and make different marks, outline it on the wood. So you can cut on that and make your own cutter. So your imagination tells you what you can do. Little star patterns, curlicues, wrapping up nails with the wire to create a heat and a brand, and then you can go ahead and decorate whatever it is that you're working on. Thank you. The various wires that Graham suggests using is 16, 18, and 22 gauge. Nichrome wire. I looked up online and found a place called, let's see, Jacobs. Turn around this way. There we go. Jacobs Online Nichrome wire. And found that for 22 gauge, 10 feet is $5.50. 18 gauge is 10 feet is $7.25. And 16 gauge for 10 feet is $8.50. So you can see that it's rather cheap. And 10 feet of this is probably more than 3 of you will use. So it will go quite a ways because, again, you're only using a relatively small piece. That's Jacobs Online is what I found has these very good prices. And the prices do vary considerably from different suppliers, and some of them you have to buy 100 feet, which is ridiculous for our purpose.
You ever try using the nichrome wire out of an old toaster?
No, I haven't tried. Really? Okay, I was not aware that that was present. I did try an experiment at home, though. It seems to me like I have a soldering iron, and you just plug that into the wall. So I was thinking, why do we have to hook all this thing up through one of these things, take out the guts, rewire it? Why can't we just plug it into the wall? Well, I did that, and of course there was a big glow and a pop, and my circuit breaker blew off. So I said, okay, I probably need to turn down the current, so I went and got a dimmer switch, put that in the line, and you wouldn't believe the noise a dimmer switch makes when it blows. It goes, kapow! So, holy. So we found out the reason why a soldering iron can be plugged into the wall is that there is a small transformer circuit inside the soldering iron to change it from AC to DC current. So you do have to use AC current. You do have to use DC current and not AC. So I thought there was a simpler way to do it, but no, I guess not. This is something that Graham Priddle made. It's just a piece of PVC pipe. And then he ran, oh, you're going to talk about? Okay, there we go. Enough said. Any other questions now? Okay.
John Beasley talked about finding a mentor to help you do something, and I highly recommend that. I think it's a great idea. I called my friend Neil and said, help me make one of these battery chargers. So I went over to Neil's place and we bought a Harbor Freight charger and went over and tore the guts out of it and put it together and got it all done. And I said, you know, Neil, I want to make some changes to that a little bit. I said, first of all, I want to have a light on my charger so I know when it's on. So I went and bought a switch that was a lighted switch. And I thought, boy, this is going to be the cat's meow. Well, it turns out that this is an old people switch, and the light is on when the switch is off. So I put it there, and it works like a charm. I know when it's off. So when the light's not on, I know it's on. And then I went online and I looked at all the information online, and the guy says, you need to use a low voltage magnetic dimmer switch. What's a low voltage magnetic dimmer switch? They're designed for these circuits where you've got low voltage lights, maybe in your yard, and they all run a transformer. So I went on and I bought a low voltage dimmer switch, and I put that on. So now I have a lighted switch on one side, and I have a switch on the other side that also has a light in it. And it's also a old people switch. The light is on when the switch is off. So, and now I got to play with it to know which one switch and which is on and which is off. I can always I can find this in the dark as long as it's plugged in. And then the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to make my charger so I could use different cables on it. So I put an adapter on the back side where I now can plug in any wood burning tip and make it work. And so I took, the Dallas Club had Molly Winton in town, and Molly has a little booklet. Molly's got this little booklet out that she sells for $5 on how to make wood burner handles and brands. So I bought one of those, and I made some of the Molly Winton wood burner handles. And they work really good. But when you use them with really high heat, they get really hot. So I said to myself, Graham Priddle did this demonstration, and he used a wood burner that had PVC on it with air holes in it. So what happens if we make one of those? And the whole idea of Graham's design was that it's not going to get near as hot under high burning conditions. And so I said, that can't be that hard to make. So again, I went over to my friend Neil's house and looked closely at the one he had on his burner, and came up with a bunch of ideas on how to make these things. And they're really very, very simple to make. You start with a piece of PVC, and you drill some holes in it. I've made them in all different lengths. I personally like the 4-inch length the best. I've made them in 5 inches, and I've made them in 6 inches. And but for some reason, the 4-inch one really works the best. And I've got some of those here as well. Then you take a piece of wood, and you drill a couple holes in it. And you go and buy some brass rod. Now, you say, where do you get brass rod? This is 8-inch brass rod that I bought from Enco, and it comes in 6-foot lengths, and it sells for about $3.75 for 6 feet, and they charge you about $15 to ship it. So I said, I got to find another source for brass rod. Welding supply, you say? It turns out that Graham Priddle used welding rod, brass welding rod, and so I said, where can I find some of that? I went to Fulton's Hardware here in Denton, and they've got 3 feet long brass rod that they sell for $1.50. And I only use about 6 inches of it, so out of 3 feet I can make 3 of these. It's all 1/8 inch rod, 1/8 inch brass rod. Then, so now you've got a piece of PVC, you've got something that'll fit in it to hold the brass rods in place. And what I do is I cut that piece in half so that I have one on the front and one on the back side to hold everything in place. And this is kind of just an exaggerated view of it. I'll pass that around. So here it is sticking into the piece of wood, brass rods, and have it on the other end as well just to hold everything nice and straight. Then you go to Radio Shack and you buy one of these European connector blocks. And you take it apart and you use 2 of those and you put one on the end of each brass rod. And then it's just a matter of inserting those into the piece of wood on both ends. I happen to solder them on. You don't need to. You solder wires on the other end, and you have a complete unit that this is one that was made, and I solder wires on and then put heat shrink tubing on the end of it for protection. You can make it any length you want. I put a 1/4 inch audio jack on it. I'm able to plug it into the wood burner, and it works really well.
What gauge wire did you use?
I bought 14 gauge speaker wire because it was cheap, and I bought like 100 feet of it. And it turns out that I started measuring the voltage coming out. When these things turn red hot, you're running about 7.5 or 8 volts out of the transformer. So the power here is really, really quite low. Running quite a few amps through it, but overall power is less than 50 watts easily. No, it's coming out of the transformer as AC. The question was, is it DC, AC or DC? And it's coming. We've taken all of the electronic circuitry out of the box completely, so it's strictly AC. Peter asked me to talk about the plug-in. It's just a standard audio connector. I bought a bunch of these on eBay, and this is the plug and the receptacle that I used on my box. So it just plugs in, and
When Graham was here, he said something about this connector.
yeah, doesn't like these. Doesn't like connectors on it because he says there's too much loss in there. Well, you know, if you're doing the amount of burning that Graham's doing, perhaps you don't want any losses. But we get this thing so hot that the amount of loss we're getting is so minimal.
Does your connector get hot?
My connector does not get hot. David bought one from Radio Shack, and it's a much looser connection than I'm using, and his gets very hot. Yeah, I bought good Switchcraft connectors, and I wanted to make sure I got a good contact in there. So, I'm sorry, say again? What business did you use? Well, I was in the connector business. Joel talked about the wire. I bought wire from the same place he was referring to. This happens to be 18 gauge. I bought 30 feet of it on eBay for $12 shipped. So I got 30 feet of it. And I've already shared a whole lot of it with a lot of people, and I don't think we'll ever use it up. So, any questions on making these? They're really simple to make.
On the ends, how do you soldering? How do you brass too?
Here,
On the other end.
just solder your leads onto it and cover it up with heat shrink tubing. Yep. Here or there? No. Now I've the one that's going around I've used a lot, and I've taken these lower screws out completely and have not had any problems. So pass that one around too. That's got a tip on it.
The diameter of your PVC, how does it feel? Could it be smaller a little bit?
The-
Thinking CPVC type, a little bit smaller diameter.
The only problem with going smaller is that you've got to keep spacing for the two rods that run down through it. Or you've got to insulate one of the rods. You could easily insulate. We want to know if you could use a smaller PVC. And sure you can, but you got to be careful with the two rods going down through it so they don't touch, or make sure you insulate one of the rods really well. This is, yeah, standard half-inch PVC, and it's,
They make another product called CPVC, which is a little bit smaller diameter. It's made for high temperature.
in all the burning I've done with this, I've never had it get warm enough to worry about temperature.
I was thinking about diameter feel.
Yeah. Notice that the tip on this one is bent substantially, so when I'm burning, I'm doing it this way rather than straight down. And if I plug this thing in and turned it on, you'd see why. You end up with a lot of flame when this thing is red hot. So I'm not holding it like a pencil. So in that regard, it's nice to have a little extra size for holding. So we'll pass that one around. That's been used a lot. Any other questions? Enough on burning.
I've been called a lot of things, but it's the first time I've been called a plethora. Okay, my first idea is to make a simple sawing sled for your table saw, or your bandsaw, excuse me. I'm sure part of all of our turning is we've got that bandsaw there, and here's a simple sled, and you have a V here and some kind of a guide to go through your keyway. And this one was made, I have a piece of wood for the guide. And this is, I think, a very, it's handy, it's easy, you get good square cuts, plus it's a big-time safety factor. If you're cutting a dowel or something round, as we know, as you feed in, the grade wants to flip it forward, and that's a disaster. And it also gives you a way to make sure your hands are out of the way if you're cutting small pieces off, so forth. The other, I guess I didn't bring it, is that instead of making a piece of wood here to go into the keyway, if you buy a 3/4 angle stock, aluminum stock. It turns out that it's 1/8 of an inch thick. And most of those keyways standard are 3/4 wide. So if you just take it and run it across your table saw, you're going to have a 1/8 slot in here, and you just press it in. If it doesn't quite fit, you may have to file it here, there, so forth, but it'll go right through, and that's a much faster way than cutting a strip, fitting it, gluing it on there, and trying to square it up. You're also automatically square because you're running across that fence. Right. Second idea is to make a simple tool holder that fits on your ways. And so it would fits in here, and you just set your tools in. And if you have a job and you're going to use 3 or 4, you just set them on there. And in my case, my lathe is here, and a bench is over there, so you're always walking back and forth. And especially if it's a repetitive job, you have them right here. And it, again, just a board, a couple pieces, and just put little slots in them. Just cut them on the bandsaw, and then something to fit within your ways, and you slide it back and forth. Okay. Not that any one of us has ever had a problem cutting through the bottom of a bowl or a workpiece. Anyone had that problem? Here's a very simple way to handle that, and I'm gonna do it in front. Obviously you'd be marking it on your side of the lathe, but let me do it here. Just put a mark on there and take a square. I'm going to slide this along and mark the face of each of the chucks you have. And I happen to have two of the one-ways, the larger and the smaller, so I only have 2 marks on there. And so I have it here and here, and one has the T on it for the talon, and the other one is whatever it is. So, stronghold, a T and an S, got it. And you need to know which one you have on there at the time. So then if you're, let's say we want to know, come up here, put a scale from there to the mark, and you know exactly where the face is, come off whatever thickness of the bottom you want. So it's very easy, and it's quick to do. A lot of times we're taking the, we have the depth gauge, put it in there, and then you're standing up trying to figure out where that bottom of that bowl is. Well, you've eliminated any of the distortion you might have. Let's see. Where am I? Whoop. Another easy one, easy off, is that on my table saw blades, when you get a new blade, it cuts just great, and as soon as it gets to that point where the resin builds up, you start getting that little bit of burning. Well, I found that if you take easy off, and I just take some aluminum foil, lay the blade on there, spray it, flip it, spray the other side, and wait the 5 to 10 minutes, whatever it says on the label, wash it off, dry it, get some oil on it. It takes all of that, all of those resins off. And I've done this for many, many years. And then it dawned on me, I've got resin all over my lathe, my tools, and so forth. So if you use Easy Off, it'll take all of that crud off, build up off your lathe. So just a simple idea.
Where do you get it?
It's in the kitchen under the sink. It would just, yeah, that's a good point. It would just be at the grocery store there and anywhere.
I didn't know.
Yeah. But that's where I found it. Another real simple one, I was visiting with my son and his daughter and the two boys down in Plano, and they had a little table there and so forth, and lo and behold, they had these pencils. This is called My First Ticonderoga Pencil, and you can find these nice big fat pencils with extra starch lead in them, and they are just great when you're trying to mark things and so forth. I probably 1,000,000 times I stuck it in there and bing, the tip is gone, I've got to go sharpen it. These are just great, and you can find them anywhere. They sell school supplies. Just a simple option. Okay. Here's one. I don't know if you've noticed, I got funny fingers. It's called arthritis. And as we age, we can't grab things, turn things, and every bloody thing won't open. And so when you buy your can of varnish or whatever it is, so forth, and you're out there, and I end up with the chain locks on it, doing this trick. Well, the best way to eliminate that is as soon as you buy it, open it up and run a bead of super glue between the metal threaded part and the plastic. And just let it dry before you put it on, in case you get it sloppy. And from then on, boy, it just comes right off as if you're 20 years old. It's great. Okay. But one other item, and I didn't need to bring anything for the show of it, is it's okay to use 80 grit sandpaper. It's okay to use it. And many times, if you see John's going to turn, looks like something here, there's no problem. You probably don't even need to sand it. But if you're doing a large bowl, or you've got a piece of wood that's not behaving right, no matter what you do, you're not going to get that sucker in. So if you think about sanding, starting with the lower grits as your last forming step in making this piece, go ahead and do it. And the only people who don't want you to do that are selling you a tool. And I can recall when I first started turning, and if I don't start with 120 or 180, this is a bad piece. And then I found out that it's the wood, brother. You can't do it. So go ahead and don't be feared of that. And the last kind of trick, I guess, or tip, I guess it would be more in the tip category, is when you're working on a project and you look at it and you go, I wonder what, so forth, call a member. That's what we're here for. And it doesn't have to be a mentor. Mentors are there and they may know and so forth, but a lot of times a mentor will say, well, call Sam Slovak. He knows about that stuff. Or call this guy, and all of a sudden, bingo, you have a solution and you're on your way. And I'm going to use my friend Neil Brandt as an example. I made those two stools there, and I've been making these stools, and Neil came over and used my jigs to make some of them, and I was talking about the angles. And he said, well, how'd you get the angles? And I said, well, I got some dowels, put them in there, and went, that looks like it. Well, so Neil's, and he said, what angles are you using out there? And I said, well, the same one as the top. It's a parallel one. No, he said, no, it isn't. It's swayed out. I said, okay. So Neil went off, and the next thing I know in my email is a program. If I put in the length of the leg, the amount of the splay, and push a button and divide, I get the angle of those legs coming out from the seat. And then I push another button over there, and I get the angle for the stretchers. And in my case, he printed it out so I can do the arithmetic. So there is always a member who can help you, so please avail yourself of that. That's what we're here for, and that's why we have our club. That's all I had. Next.
Here's the microphone.
Sharpening different tools. I have several of these, and it's a little crude, but it fits over the wheel, and then you can adjust this and tighten it down so that you have a setting for each tool as you're using it. If you're sharpening 2 or 3 tools, you have 2 or 3 of these. Scrap wood and 15 cents worth of hardware maybe. And then after that, I got a CBN wheel. So I got smart, I thought, and I cut some PVC pipe, and I put this over my one way, and that would preset for every tool or for multiple tools for different angles. And Neil Brand said, well, I don't want to have to take it off all the time. That's too much time. So I thought, well, there's got to be an easier way. So the next thing I did is, it just got too simple. I just went and got a 1x2, stuck it here, cut it, slides it in. This is set up for the Ellsworth. You know, I got one for several tools. And with the CBN, you don't have to worry about the wheel, you know, degrading, so that works pretty well. And for people that get real anal, getting their sandpaper just perfectly to the right size, I made this little thing. I saw it on YouTube or something, and you put a piece of sandpaper in it, and so you go to mark number 1, and it's a hacksaw blade, and you just rip it. And then if you want a quarter sheet, then you go to mark number 2. Or if you want an 1/8 of a sheet, you go to mark number 2, and then mark number 3. Or if you want quarter sheet, you go 1 and then 3. You turn your paper and then go to 3. So it's just a little something to build if you're not doing anything else. That's kind of, I'm not that anal, but I saw it on YouTube or somewhere. I got to have one. You know how that goes. And that's pretty much everything I had tonight. Nothing real high-tech or anything like the previous ones. But when you go to SWAT, look and see what's around. All these demonstrators, every one of them's got something you've never seen before, and you can go home and make it. And whether you use it or not, it's still fun to make. So, thank you.
Show you that I have learned something tonight. I'm not going to use the ear thing. I'm also into low tech, and I only have one. So no plethoras here. There's a story behind everything, but the Dallas Club has been doing a demonstration day over at Boone Elementary. Over at Boone Elementary School in Allen for about 8 or 10 years. They have a thing called Gold Day, and they bring in firemen and pilots and the Dallas area woodturners to give demonstrations, and we'll give demonstrations on doing to small groups of kids of 10 to 12 kids at a time, and they'll run through 8 groups during the day. Ken Rogers and I drew the short straw this year, so we were going to do that, and I thought he was getting the stock together for the tops and that we were going to demonstrate, and he thought I was doing it. So when I discovered that, the only thing I had at home was some dowel, which just happened to be too small to fit in the chuck. So just to make it all work, got some PVC like everybody else has used in demonstrations, cut a notch in it, slipped it on, put it in the chuck. Bring your tail stalk up if you ever do this, because it doesn't hold quite like the jaws, but it did work. We did our demonstration. We ran about 80 or 90 kids through there that day, and they were happy, and we escaped without any damage to the room or any of the kids. Thanks.
Just before I retired, I had a smaller shop, and I had a real problem with sawdust in the shop. And when I retired, I knew I'd be doing a lot more in the shop, so I had to address the sawdust issue. You got that, Mike? The next slide, please. So I decided I didn't have $700 to just run out and get a jet. So I started out and I was going to compare the jet as a standard and build something I thought that would do as well as the jet for less money. Next slide. You'll see the stats for the jet, the specifications, if you will. Pretty much standard, you already know them. CFM, cubic feet per minute, 1,100. Horsepower, 1.5. This is the model 1100 you just saw the picture of. Cost $699. That's of today from Woodcraft. Now, I know everything's going to be on sale at some time, but I'm just using today's prices off the internet at places where we shop. It's a nice, well-done piece of equipment for $700. Next slide, please. Central Machine, Harbor Freight. You'll notice it's 1,550 CFM. It's a 2 horsepower motor. Oh, and this is before you use your discount coupon. It says $209. I bought mine for $180. So that's what I'm going to compare with. Now, the microns, the jet's a 2 micron. This one, as you buy it, is a 5 micron. The problem with the 5 micron vacuum, I will explain. It works great, except you get everything smaller than 5 micron out in the air. So you wind up with flour all over everything, including your lungs. And that was the problem I had, is I would use it whenever I was standing on the lathe with the bellows, and I still get all this other dust out through the bag, and I would have all that in the air. And my goal was to get rid of it. Next slide, please. So I bought the central machinery. And what I added was, the first thing I added was Penn State makes a 40-inch, 1 micron filter. 40-inch. Now the one that comes on the jet is 24. This is 40. The way I'll explain it is like in your home air conditioner. Most of you have 1-inch filters in your central system, right? Do you know what the standard is now becoming? 4-inch filters. I know that because I just built a house, and I found out when they came in, they said, oh, you don't want to use these, you want to use a 4-inch. The reason why is because you have more surface area in the filter. Therefore, it takes more dirt to clog it. So a 40-inch canister filter will take a great deal more dust than a 24-inch will, and I have better airflow. So I'm not losing any of my CFM to dust on the inside. Next, please. AKA means also known as. The jet has what's called a vortex, and it looks like a walk. And Jim Day back here was looking, he knew what I was trying to do with this, and he found this on YouTube, I think, right, Jim? Next slide, please. $15 for the walk. Jim found it. And what I did, I took the handles off, flipped it upside down, used 2-inch brass tubing like you'd use for a pen, to give it the airspace that I wanted to. Next slide. And it mounts underneath the bin in your, as it comes in. This is recessed below it, so it's in where the plastic bag would be, that side, so that it traps, and this is something that jet, their vortex, that's how it works. So, next slide, please, Mike. Let's compare them. The jet, like I said, it's a great product, $700. I bought the central machinery, the filter, and the walk, and there was a difference of $235. Now, that by itself is not that big a deal. The difference is I now have a vacuum that has a higher CFM. The jet's a 2 micron, mine's a 1 micron. And I have a bigger more horsepower in it. I'm not saying this is the best thing in the West. It worked for me because I didn't have to lay out as much money. and I have a better vacuum that I can use throughout the shop on any of my tools. And my goal is to keep the dust down. Now I've got a larger shop and I make more dust, and this is handling it fine, but I did augment it with a jet air cleaner that goes up in the ceiling. But this is just to show that you don't have to be limited by just what's in the catalog. You can look and you can add and you can change things and save a little money if you want to.
I have my lathe in a two-car garage, and try to contain I do large wood turnings. I try to contain a lot of the shavings by using a surround, simple netted surround around my lathe. It helps control keeping all the chips from flying up into the shelves and everything else. And these curtains can be bought on Amazon. They're IKEA curtains. They come 4 panels. They're 10 foot wide by 8 foot high for $23. Simply installed using electrical conduit, half-inch electrical conduit. They come in 10-foot pieces. Buy them at Home Depot. They're $2.04 a piece. They're installed by using the conduit hangers. They come a 5-pack of hangers at $2.48 and easily installed. I would say the installation time takes about 5 minutes. At the corners, you can use the conduit elbows, which I've used here. And you can also bend. You can see there's a bend in the conduit. You can bend it over your knee easily. And it just it installs real easily.
You ready? Okay. When you first started turning pins, we had a mandrel, and it had a little dimple in the end of it. You brought up your live center and stuck it in the end of it. But when you put a little pressure on it, it began to bend, and it would bend. So then they came out with a tailstock that had a hole in it, and you just ran that up on your mandrel right into your work, and you got away from that. This is a one-way live center, and you can buy the 7mm bushings in the long ones or the short ones, and that's nothing but a long bushing. So instead of buying one of these made for turning pins, you can just take the point out of, I don't know about other particular live centers, but you can take the point out of this one, and that 7mm will just fit right into it, and now you've got one instead of buying it. The other thing I wanted to talk about was we had a demonstration here, I don't know how long ago. They were talking about turning long finials, and they came up with a way to hold the end of it to keep it from flopping around with a little box that fit on the end of your tailstock, and they had some string that you had to wrap around it. Some of y'all remember that. And I went home and I tried to do that, and I never could get any pressure on it without pulling the string off. So I thought, well, there's got to be a better way. So I just turned this to fit on the end of my tailstock. And when you start turning the finial, I turned the point, and the point was, all of this was large. And then simply, and this is, I drilled a hole in through this and then tapered it. And once you get that point, just your point made, you can bring the tailstock up then, and all the pressure you have to put on it is just enough to make this turn whenever you turn the lathe on. And if you've turned one of these, you get a lot of chatter because there's nothing supporting this end of it. And sometimes it'll break. But you can turn one using this apparatus. Doesn't cost anything.
and you could turn one that was 2 feet long. And it takes all of the chatter out of it. I turned this one in about 15 minutes. And there's no chatter whatsoever, no flexing or anything. And it just made turning this a whole lot easier. So, and this is something you can make on your lathe. One way, tails live center, any live center you can make something that will fit over the turning part of it. That's all I have.
Just a couple more things that I wanted to show. Some of you know that I like to make my own tools. And one of the things that I like to make is handles. Somebody asked if I was going to talk about handles tonight. I make a lot of my own handles, and I buy aluminum rod on eBay and just drill them out. And then I buy the covering from Home Depot and slip it on, and I find that I'm turning more now with my own handles than I do with handles that I've purchased or on tools. I've taken a lot of tool handles off and used my own handles because I like them better. This happens to be a skew gouge that I made as well. It's a piece of high-speed steel that I bought from Enco for about $7 in 5-inch lengths, and it's an ideal tool for hollowing. Am I on down there? And so if you're going into end grain and hollowing, this is just a wonderful tool for that. But another way of doing it is go buy a cheap screwdriver, grind the end of it off, sharpen it, and you end up with another wonderful hollowing tool. You can see the ribbons coming off. It's not high-speed steel, so you're going to have to sharpen it a little more often. But for $2, you can make a really, really nice skew gouge, and it works really well on end grain.
Do you have any difficulty getting the tubing onto the aluminum job?
The question was, do I have any problem getting the tubing on the aluminum handles? And I don't. I put the handle in, I have drilled a hole in a piece of wood block about 1.5 inches deep, and I put the handle down in that hole, and I start the tubing on the top, and I take a rubber mallet and I just beat it on. And it goes on just fine. The first handle I ever made, I made out of 3/4 inch steel rod instead of aluminum. And I like it. It's nice and heavy. Peter would love it because it's heavier than the aluminum. But I decided I couldn't get the rubber on, so I lubricated it with soap. Well, soap's got a lot of water in it, and now the handle's got this nice brown rust color underneath the rubber tubing. So I quit using steel, number one, and secondly, I don't lubricate them at all anymore. I just beat it on with a rubber mallet. So that takes too much time. Hairspray lubrication works as well. Could be. This is a copy of Craft Supply's new catalog, and they've got a tool in here called the Decorating Elf Tool, and it sells for $65, and all it is that better? There's the elf tool. and it's used for, I use it a lot for, well, I was going to use it a lot for decorating tops, but I didn't want to spend $65. I said, I can make one of these. So again, I went out and got some aluminum rod and bought some of these carbide Dremel tips, and they have an 1/8" shaft on them, so I found some bearings that have 1/8" holes inside. I bought the bearings, measured the outside, figured out what it would take to get the bearings down inside. I put a magnet down in the bottom to hold the tool in place, and I'll pass these around. You can pull on it a little bit, and you can feel the magnet pull the tool back down in. And for the price of, I think I've got 3 bearings in each one of these just to add some lateral support. So the price of 3 bearings at a couple bucks for the 3 bearings, $1 for the aluminum. I was going to put handles on it, and I just haven't gotten around to doing that. And any Dremel bit on the end, and you've got an elf tool for $6 or $8 rather than $65.
3 bearings in the hole?
I have 3 bearings down in the hole. Yeah, I just did that to give it the lateral strength support.
With some of the shafts on Dremel tools are not an 1/8 inch.
Yeah, that you might be right, because one of these are not interchangeable. So it could be that the shafts are not perfectly 1/8 inch, but I lucked out on these. Tom, where did I get the bearings? I shop a lot on eBay, and there's a guy in Florida called U.S. Bearings and Belts that I bought a lot of bearings from over the years. Kelly Saw, you can go to, there's a Purvis bearing here in Denton, but
Router fits.
These bearings end up being skateboard bearings. For the kids that buy skateboards with the round rubber wheels, I think these are what those bearings are mainly used on. And I'm not positive about that, but one of the ads I saw said they were skateboard bearings. Yeah, and they work, so we'll just pass these around. Any questions? That's all I've got. Oh, what? I have one more thing. If you've ever wanted a grinding wheel, where you don't want to worry about destroying something, you can make one. And this is nothing more than a 2-inch piece of wood that I threaded, and I put sandpaper on it, and I used the daylights out of this for sanding aluminum or sanding some wood pieces where I don't want to mess up my grinder, because I've got the CBN wheels. So if I want to grind some aluminum or shape some aluminum, this one's been used so much I almost need to change the paper on it, but I still end up using it and just really like it. Just works really well. You can use it either way. I usually use it coming toward me. If I'm going to use it for sharpening some tools, I'll probably reverse it and have it going the other way. But the nice part is this now is a variable speed grinder. And if you want to, you can put a surface sheet on here as well, just pressure sensitive paper. I don't use it that way because I have a sander that I use for that, but you could easily do that as well. Just nice, easy, quick, cheap way of making a grinder.
So we've seen a lot of innovative ideas, a lot of ways to save money. The more money you save, the more tools you can go out and buy. So you can spread your wealth around. Let's give a hand to all these guys. They really did a nice job.